Okay, 8th grade, 5-3, solving systems by substitution. And I told you guys this won't be a particularly easy lesson. But in a nutshell, and I give you examples that you might want to spend some time looking at. You're determining, just like we have been doing, whether something has one solution, no solutions, or infinite many solutions. And what you're doing is looking at two equations, and then you're solving for either x or y or whatever variables they're using, one of them, and then you take what you've solved x to be, for example, and then you plug it into the other equation, and then you can figure out what the solutions are. So let's look at the try it down below. I think that might be the easiest one to start with. And so it says Brandon took 50 questions in an exam worth a total of 160 points. There were 2 X point questions and 5 Y point questions. How many of each type of questions were on the exam? So here's the two equations they give us. It's x plus y equals 50. Now notice I put a 1 in front of Mr. Perry. Why don't you sit right here? I put a 1 in front of each x and y because there's always assumed 1 in front of each variable. And those would be the coefficients that I'm talking about here. The other equation is 2x plus 5y equals 160. So I wrote down the two equations here. And they said to solve for the equation that has the simplest coefficients. Okay? So let's look at this one here. I'll work with this one. So I want to get one of the coefficients, or I'm sorry, one of the variables by itself. So first thing I'm going to do here, and you guys might want to write this down. I don't know where you're going to have room in your book, but somewhere if you've got scratch paper. I'm going to subtract y. Subtract y. They cancel out, so I'm left with x equals a negative y plus 50. All right, so now I know what x is. At least I've solved for x as far as I can with this equation, x equals a negative y plus 50. Now I'm going to take this and plug it into the other equation. So what is x? It's a negative y plus 50. So it's 2 times a negative y plus 50. Close the parentheses because it's 2 times x. That's x. And then I can't just stop there. I'm going to continue. It's a plus 5y equals 160. So all I did was I took one of the equations, usually the simplest one, and I solved for either x or y or m or p or z or whatever variables they're using. And that's what I did here. I got rid of the y, put it on the other side of the equation, x equals a negative y plus 50. Then I took what x is and I plugged it in. And it's 2 times what x is. And then I just wrote it down below. So 2 times a negative y plus 50 plus 5y, I just brought that down, equals 160. So now I'll use the distributive property, something we were working with last week. What's 2 times the negative y? Negative 2y plus what? 100. 2 times 50 is 100. Now, I'm not multiplying the 2 times the 5y because there's an addition symbol. The only thing I'm multiplying 2y is what's in the parentheses. So I'll just put a plus 5y equals 160. Now, do you see any like terms we can work with? Yeah. What's a negative 2y plus 5y?
3y.
So I have 3y plus 100 equals 160. Now what? Now subtract. I want to get y by itself because I want to figure out what y is. So I'll subtract 100, subtract 100. They cancel out, so I'm left with 3y equals what? 60. This should start looking pretty familiar. Divide each side by 3. Y equals 20. All right, now I know what y is. Y is 20. Well, now that I know what y is, I can just take it and plug it in. Right? What's the original equation? X plus y equals 50. So I'm going to write that down. X plus y equals 50. What's y?
20. So it's x plus 20.
So x plus 20 equals 50. Now, that's a real simple equation you guys were doing last year. And I want to find out what x is. I'm going to subtract 20, subtract 20. X equals what?
30.
So x is 30, y equals 20. That's the try it right there. Now, I gave you that information earlier, right here, and they go through the steps also, but as I've mentioned before, I like to set things up vertically and work my way down. They'll put things side by side, and to me that's just a little more confusing. But if you wanted to look at this example, you certainly can. So that's an example of solving by substitution. You solve for one variable, plug it into the other equation, and then solve for that variable. And sometimes you have to then take that and plug it back into the other one, and other times not. It just kind of depends. So these two equations, how many solutions are there? This would just be one solution. X is 30, y is 20. That's the only solution. So if we were to graph those two equations, they're just going to cross at one point. All right?
And if it was x equals 20 and y equals 20, would it still be one solution or infinite?
It would still be one solution. Yeah. Example 2, it says use substitution, and it gives you an example of a system with no solution. And if you go through the steps, you're going to end up with something that does not equal the other side, which goes to number 2 on page 284. When using substitution to solve a system of equations, how can you tell whether the system has no solution? Well, the results can never be true. So you're going to end up with a different number on each side of the equation. And I just wrote down 7 equals 5. Well, it's never true. So whenever you go through the steps and you come up with 20 on one side and 17 on the other, there's no solution. Yep, it's just not right. It doesn't compute. It doesn't work. And so for example 2, they walk you through that, and you end up with 14x equals 14x plus 7.5. That can never be true. Doesn't matter what x is. That could never be true. Example 3. It says use substitution to solve for many solutions. And it's the same process that I showed you, and I'll do some more. But you're going to end up with something like this. Here we got 254.73 equals 254.73. Or maybe you end up with 17 equals 17. So that's going to be an infinite number of solutions or many solutions. And they go through how they solve that for these two equations right here. All right. So on your scratch paper, maybe write down the first two equations here for the triad down below. Page 283, we've got y plus 1/2 x equals 3. So I'll write those down. Y equals, oops, not y equals, it's y plus 1/2 x equals 3. And then 4y plus 2x equals a negative 6. Okay, so these are the two equations I'm working on right now, A and triad, bottom of page 83. Okay. So which one of these equations would you want to work with first? Mr. Webster, what do you think? Yeah, it's got a coefficient of 1. That's easy. So let's get y by itself. Yeah, I would subtract 1/2 x. Whatever you do on one side of the equation, you do on the other. Subtract 1/2 x. Okay, so we're left with y equals a negative 1/2 x plus 3. Now we know what y is. So what do you think we'd do with that? Miss Anderson?
You would do y minus 3. I don't know, actually.
Well, look at the other equation. We have 4y plus 2x equals a negative 6. I'm just going to plug it in for y.
Right. Oh, right, yeah.
So if this is y, negative 1/2 x plus 3, I'll replace the y here with that. So it's going to be 4 times, and I'm going to put it in parentheses, a negative 1/2 x plus 3. Close the parentheses, because now I have a 2x plus 2x equals a negative 6. So now I'll use the distributive property. What's 4 times a negative 1/2?
A negative 2.
So it's going to be a negative 2x, and then 4 times 3 is what?
12.
Plus 12. And now I'm going to continue. I'm done with what's in the parentheses. I'm done using the distributive property. Plus 2x equals a negative 6. Okay? Well, now we can combine like terms. What can I get rid of here? Yeah. Negative 2x and 2x. So I'm left with 12 equals a negative 6. What do we have?
One solution.
No solution. 12 is never equal to negative 6. So for these two equations, for A and the triad, page 283, there's no solution. Okay, I don't know who's talking over there. What's going on?
I was looking at her
What's that?
food. I was looking at her food.
Her food?
And I'm like, are these hearts? And she goes,
Oh, okay. All right. No solution. All right. Let's do B. You guys write that down. What do we got here? It looks like y equals 1/4 x minus 2, and then 8y minus 2x equals a negative 16.
B. Oh, A.
Some more scratch paper here. Y equals 1/4. All right, so I wrote those two down. So y equals 1/4 x minus 2.
You don't have to do anything to it.
Y equals 1/4 x minus 2.
It's already minor.
And then 8y minus 2x equals a negative 16. So it sounds like some of you are already solving it. You guys can see what's going on here. Question, Mr. Webster?
So I was wondering if I could try, like, it shows to explain in the question, so do we,
I'm just happy if you can solve it.
okay.
You don't need to explain it. So let's do it. All right. So which one would you guys, let me pull a stick here, see who's been paying attention. There's 8 right there. All right. Mr. Meredith, which equation would you work with first?
What I did was the first one, y equals 1/4 x minus 2.
Yeah, and that's kind of convenient because they already told us what y is. So now I don't have to do any work here. I can just plug it in. So it's going to be 8 times y. Well, what is y? It's 1/4 x minus 2. And then what do I have here? A minus 2x equals a negative 16. Okay? So, Mr. Meredith, what's the next thing I would do?
Multiply 8 times 1/4 x.
Which is
It's 2x.
2x
Okay, 2x minus 16.
minus 16 minus 2x, because I'm just dropping that down, equals a negative 16.
And then,
Now, is there some like terms I can work with?
yes. 2x and negative 2x.
Yep, 2x, negative 2x. So what am I left with? Negative 16 equals negative 16. Infinite number of solutions.
Why do you have so much petty paper?
Say again?
Why do you have so much petty paper?
For that other curriculum. Okay. So I gave you guys the answers to 1 and 2. Scratch out 3. Circle 4, 5, and 6. I'll probably do, how am I doing on time here? I'll probably do another one. And then 7. So 7 right here, it's like here's the first step. And then here's the second step. Okay? So they're not two different problems, Miss Johnson. First step for number 7, second step for number 7. Number 8, I'm just looking for how many solutions. 1, none, many. For 8 and 9 here. Circle 10 and 11. 10, the number of children, and then adults, and 11 and A. What is the correct solution? Scratch out B, I'm not worried about that. Last page, 12, 1, none, many. And 13, I want to know what X and Y is. Scratch out B, not worried about that. Circle 14, 15, I mentioned it was worth a stick. So adults and students, scratch B. B, not worried about that. And 16 and 17. I think I'll end the video here. You guys want to try 12 right now? All right, go for it. I'll do it. So 160 x plus 2y equals 50.
One more
Giving me time.
and they did. So I dropped it off the wall.
Mr. Gunn, I'm sure the listeners will enjoy your singing. It's still recording, so it might increase the number of subscribers that I have. Okay. Yeah.
You only did get manipulation.
You don't get in trouble for copyright.
He's like, yeah,
Well, no, 'cause he's gonna get the video taken down by YouTube.
Okay.
He's gonna punish you.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Sorry, I'm sorry.
All right, Mr. Sortelli. What would you work with first here?
I would work with
Well, big wish.
I would work with the right one. The one on the right.
Yeah, I would too. What would you do?
Same.
Subtract 80x, 80 times x from both sides.
exactly.
So y equals a negative 80x plus 50. Now we know what y is.
That was easy.
That was easy. Now what? I can just take it and plug it in.
Yay!
So I have 160 x plus 2 times
Negative 80 x plus 50
plus 50 equals 50. Now I heard somebody say, it might have been Mr. Meredith, I did it the other way. In a lot of these problems, you could do it differently. You could solve for a different variable first. And if your sums are correct and your operations, you don't make any mistakes, you'll come up with the same answer. But it's always easier to work with the equation that has a coefficient of 1 with one of the variables first. So, what's the next thing I would do here? Mr. Webster?
You'd multiply the 2 and the numbers in the parentheses.
Yep. So I've got 160x plus, what's 2 times a negative 80? Yeah, so I'm not going to put a plus. I'll just put a minus 160x. And what's 2 times 50?
100.
Plus 100 equals 50.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
for the y equals negative 80x plus 50, wouldn't you also divide the 50 by 2? Because
No.
you divided the negative 160 by 2.
So it was 2y. So it's 2 times y, and this is y. Okay. So anyways, what do we got here? We have 160x minus 160x. They cancel out. We're left with what? 100 equals 50.
One solution.
So, yeah, no solution. What number was that we just did?
12.
Yeah, so number 12 over here is none or no solution.
Because we're smart.
Okay? All right, I'm going to end this video.